Hi there, welcome back to the Bodhi Sparks podcast. My name is Gisani or Dr. J, and I am so grateful to be your host here today. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome. We talk a little bit about spirituality, a little bit about psychology, life purpose, things that make a lot of our hearts go humming in our chest. If this is not your first time here and you are returning, I am so grateful to be here with you today as well. So, today we're going to be diving into a topic that doesn't get talked about very often because it makes people wiggle in their seats. It's not a very comfortable topic to talk about, but I truly do believe that it's incredibly important for us to talk about things that make us feel uncomfortable, things that stretch us, because without those things, growth is not possible. So, what if I told you that the worst thing that has happened to you this year is actually what you should be most grateful for? I know that sounds completely backwards, um, because we're taught to be grateful for the good stuff, right? When we are healthy, when we hit a milestone, have achieved a goal, our wins, when we're celebrating the people around us in our lives, we're taught to be grateful for the good stuff. And of course, those things matter. But today, I want to invite you into a different kind of gratitude, one that's much more ancient, much more powerful, and actually surprisingly practical. Now, this kind of gratitude doesn't come from comfort, it comes from the chaos in our lives. This kind of gratitude is a wisdom that's rooted in something called Stoicism. And I know that a lot of you listening probably understand and know what Stoicism is. It's a very ancient, very old philosophy, I believe more than 2,000 years old, that actually has taught some of history's most resilient people not just how to survive this life or survive their hardships, but how to really use it and integrate it to become greater. Now, the Stoics believed two very radical things. First, that obstacles aren't interruptions to your path. These obstacles that we might face in our lives, they are the path. So that's the first thing. The second thing that Stoics believed is that remembering that you're going to die, that death is inevitable, isn't depressing. It's actually liberating. We're going to weave those two things together here for you today, for you to understand how incredibly powerful your frame of mind is, the context is, especially this one that we learned from Stoics from thousands of years ago. But let's start with the first idea. So let's go one at a time. Let's talk about the obstacle. So in the year 170 CE, a man named Marcus Aurelius became the most powerful person in the known world. He became the Emperor of Rome. But the thing about his reign as emperor is that it was anything but peaceful. You see, while he was emperor, there were plagues that swept through the empire, killing millions of people. Wars were ignited on every border. There were floods and famines, betrayals. I mean, even his own son turned against him. And in the middle of this chaos, Marcus sat down. We're going to be on a first name basis here. He sat down with his journal and he wrote this. He wrote, the impediment, let's try that again. That kind of came out weird a little bit. The impediment. I don't know why I can't say this word today. So Marcus Aurelius wrote down in his journal, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I'm going to read that again, not only because I mispronounced it like 3 times, but because it's actually really, really powerful when we let that sink in. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus wasn't being poetic, or maybe he was, but he was being more than that. He was writing what eventually becomes a survival guide, not just for himself, but for millions of people afterwards. You see, every difficulty that broke into his life eventually became a teacher. They shaped him into someone stronger, wiser, more grounded. And it turns out modern psychology agrees. Now, I don't remember exactly when, but it was in the 90s, maybe mid 90s. There were two researchers called Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun who began studying trauma survivors, people who had faced cancer, disasters, right, or devastating loss, even. They expected to find scars, devastation. But instead, what these researchers found was that they discovered in these people something called post-traumatic growth. And this is really, really big in the field of positive psychology, if you guys are familiar. And what post-traumatic growth is essentially that these survivors didn't just recover from trauma, they evolved. They reported deeper relationships, a greater appreciation for life, and a sense of strength that they never knew they had. They had this complete reorientation towards meaning. Someone that comes to mind when I think about this, when I speak about this, is Viktor Frankl. If you don't know him, he's amazing. Famous Austrian psychiatrist who lived through the Holocaust, not just one, two, or three, but four different concentration camps. And he not only survived this ordeal of literally losing every single person that he ever loved in his life, but he found a complete reorientation to meaning. Now, here's the key about post traumatic growth. You see, we don't grow despite our struggles, we grow because of them. So, if anywhere in your heart you're searching and you find that growth for you, evolution, ascension, right, becoming a greater person, really actualizing to your potential is important to you, you have to understand and accept, acknowledge that we don't grow despite the struggle, we grow because of it, which means that struggle is a very important key factor in what gives our lives meaning. And the funny thing is that resilient people, think people that we think are resilient, or maybe resilience comes easily to them, these people who bounce back quickly, they rarely experience the kind of transformation we're talking about. Why? Because their worldview, it stays intact. Growth requires rupture. And we know this even through training our physical bodies, right? If you want to grow your muscles, you need to create micro tears. So growth, even metaphorically speaking, it requires rupture. It's the shattering that forces you to rebuild. So I welcome you to think about your own life right now. Think about what the biggest obstacle is that stands in your way. Maybe it's heartbreak. Maybe someone you love left you. Maybe you lost someone through death, physical death anyway. Maybe the biggest obstacle standing in your way is burnout. Maybe you just have spent so much of your life giving, 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 and rarely turned to nourish yourself, and you're just feeling really burnt out. Or maybe this resonates like it does for me. Maybe the biggest obstacle standing in your way right now is the quiet grief of a dream that didn't quite happen. Now, our instinct with any of these things is to fix it, to erase it, or maybe wait until it's over so that we can get back to our quote unquote real life. But what if this is your real life? What if the obstacles the trauma, the pain? What if that's the exact terrain that you were meant to traverse, to grow through? Let's say you lose your job, right? Now, the normal, typical, or conventional response is, oh my God, this is terrible. I have nothing to be grateful for. And you get stuck in the spiral of worrying, being anxious about things that you think are right around the corner. That's a typical response, right? This is terrible. I lost my job. The stoic response is something along the lines of, this is teaching me who I am beyond the title. It's showing me what I truly value. This quote unquote loss is clearing space for something real. Now, that stoic response, that particular perspective, it doesn't make the loss easy, but it does make it meaningful. The Stoics had a name for this. It's amor fati, the love of fate. Not just an acceptance of your fate, but appreciation for the lessons hidden in what your ego didn't choose. So here's a gentle challenge if you want to grow from learning about this. Choose just one obstacle, just one. Think about it and ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What strength am I building that I couldn't build any other way? So instead of allowing your past to define who you are, allow the future potential to define who you're becoming right now. Remember that what stands in the way becomes the way. So let's turn to the second Stoic principle that we introduced earlier, the one that a lot of us like to avoid. And essentially, well, actually, it's called memento mori. Remember, you must die. I know that this is not exactly the kind of phrase that you might expect when we're talking about gratitude in this episode. But this practice, memento mori, remember you must die, isn't about death, it's about life. When psychologists remind people of their mortality, it's called mortality salience. What they find is something remarkable. We become kinder. We become more intentional. We begin to prioritize relationships over status, experiences over possessions. We essentially just stop sweating the small stuff because we see how small the small stuff really is. And mortality salience is actually the reason why one of my most favorite movies so far is the movie Saw. It's a psychological thriller for those of you that haven't seen it. It's a horror movie, so if you don't like gore, I do not recommend you watching it. I didn't watch it for the gore. I honestly turned it on because psychological thrillers really do get my brain working in a certain way. But I didn't expect to have come to the end of that movie with goosebumps just rolling down my spine and down my arms, and my heart just completely frozen. I'm not going to give away the movie in case you haven't seen it, but essentially by the end of the movie, it's like a light bulb went off. Something woke up inside of me. And it's exactly that phrase, mortality salience, thinking about death, but then also thinking about life. Remembering that I must die is something that really wakes something up in me. One study actually even found that contemplating death in this way reduces anxiety about everyday problems. Because suddenly, the things that used to feel so daunting or so huge, like in your face, it shrinks back into perspective. Now, there is another famous Stoic, Epictetus. He was born a slave. I believe he was physically disabled. He was beaten. And he had every reason in his life to believe he was handed the wrong cards, that life was unfair. Because for him, in context, compared to what other people had, it was. But and yet, despite or because of it, he became one of the greatest teachers of freedom. And there's nothing more that I love than freedom. How did he become one of the greatest teachers of freedom, you ask? He practiced death awareness daily. He reminded himself that everything, his body, his freedom, his life, it was all temporary. That realization didn't make him despair. It made him unstoppable. I was actually walking my dogs this past week, one of the evening walks, and I found myself just standing there as my dogs were sniffing something over by the bushes. I looked over at the skyline and the setting sun, and I mean, amazing doesn't even capture the colors, the brilliance of the setting sun. And this moment of a daily ritual that could become something that loses its sacredness, it became sacred again because I had this thought, this awareness as I'm staring at the sky, going, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here for. I don't know how much longer I can actually witness the beautiful sky like this. And it made that experience of walking the dog so much more delicious. Going back to Epictetus, he wrote, death is necessary and it cannot be avoided. Where can I go to get away from it? And in that acceptance, he found peace. Because once we stop fighting what we can't control, we get to this place where we can reclaim our energy to focus what we can focus on, what we can control, which is our response. We control who we are, our character, and your integrity. When we remember that we're going to die, when you remember that you're going to die, obstacles stop feeling like life has gone wrong. These obstacles in our lives begin to feel like life, presenting you with opportunities to truly live and experience it. The Stoics even practice something called the last time. So, the last time I watch the sunset, the last time you have dinner with your parents, the last time that your child asks you for help. When you see each moment as possibly the last time, something shifts. That argument that you had with your boss or your coworker, it loses its edge. Maybe the traffic jam that you're sitting in becomes a little bit more bearable. You might even begin to realize that this moment in time, the ordinary, this too is sacred. You might begin to acknowledge and understand that even the most inconvenient, the most painful, or the most ordinary parts of our lives, they're all sacred. And maybe that's the most or the ultimate form of gratitude. We're not practicing gratitude when it's easy, just for the bright, beautiful moments, but we're learning and practicing gratitude for even the fleeting, imperfect, or even painful ones. So let's weave this all together, okay? Post-traumatic growth teaches us that struggle is what transforms us. Mortality awareness, memento mori, remembering that I too must die, teaches us that life is short and therefore precious. When we put these things together, they reveal a bigger truth, a deeper truth. We don't grow in the easy moments. We grow in the hard ones, and we don't have unlimited time to do it. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for peace. Epictetus didn't wait for freedom. Both of them learned to say, "Thank you for this moment, even this." Not because they enjoyed the suffering, but because they understood the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the teacher. And the ticking clock is what makes every lesson urgent. So here's another reflection for you this week or today. Think of a difficulty that you might be facing right now. And with that difficult obstacle in mind, say in your mind's eye or even out loud, "Thank you for what I am learning through the struggle. Thank you for teaching me what I need to become greater." And then add, "This might be my only chance to learn this lesson." You don't have to like it. You just have to stay awake to it. Because gratitude isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about realizing that this is it. This messy, beautiful, unpredictable life is yours, and it's fleeting. And that's exactly what makes it sacred. So today, I challenge you with love. I invite you to practice being grateful for something difficult, not because it's easy, but because it's real. Thank you for listening as always. I am so grateful to be here with you, and I will see you on the other side.